The salt-laden wind howled a mournful dirge around Dead Man's Ledge. The jagged, skeletal fingers of rock jutted out from the Maine coast near Gull's Head, a stark monument to the nameless sailor who'd met his demise there. Locals swore they could hear his mournful cries carried on the wind, a chilling prelude to every tempest. John Brown, a man as weathered as the sea itself, scoffed at their superstitions, nicknamed Wrecker. By some, a title he wore with a weary shrug, Brown lived by the sea's harsh code: respect its fury, reap its bounty. His life revolved around the rhythm of the tides. There was Bess, his sharp-tongued wife, a constant amidst the ever-changing ocean. Then there was Nell, a waif the sea had tossed their way, a blossom blooming unexpectedly in their rough-hewn world. Completing their peculiar family was Antonio, a dark-faced Spaniard who arrived one blustery night shrouded in a past as murky as the depths. He helped with the boats, his silence as vast as the ocean itself, broken only by the occasional mutterings in a language that seemed to bristle with unspoken rage. His obsidian eyes flickered with an inner fire that sent shivers down Nell's spine, a disquietude she couldn't quite explain. One day, a storm unlike any other roared in. The wind howled like a banshee, a tormented spirit unleashed. Waves, colossal and frothing, crashed against the shore with the fury of 1,000 leviathans. As the storm raged, a battered yacht floundered in the distance, a speck caught in the ocean's monstrous grip. Brown, ever the rescuer, battled the elements in his sturdy boat, a beacon of hope in the churning sea. He found a young man, Edward Irving, clinging to the wreckage, his face pale with terror, yet filled with a youthful spirit that shone even through the storm's fury. Brown brought him back to his cabin, a haven from the tempest's wrath. Edward, a scholar from the south with a gentle air and eyes that held the warmth of 1,000 sunlit days, brought a breath of fresh air into their lives. He regaled them with tales of faraway lands, his voice a soothing balm against the constant roar of the sea. Nell, her eyes sparkling with newfound curiosity, found herself drawn to his gentle nature and his love for the natural world, a love that resonated deep within her soul. Edward, in turn, saw a kindred spirit in Nell, a young woman yearning for a world beyond the crashing waves. This blossoming connection didn't escape Antonio's watchful gaze. His silence deepened, a dark cloud settling permanently on his brow. One day, with the sea shimmering under a deceptively calm sky, Antonio approached Edward. He spoke of rare, iridescent shells found on a rock beyond Dead Man's Ledge, promising a quick trip and a return before the tide turned. Edward, eager to explore and please Nell with a unique gift, readily agreed. Unaware of the malevolent glint Antonio skillfully masked, Edward set sail with him. They reached the rock, a tiny island soon to be swallowed by the rising tide. Edward, engrossed in searching for the shells, didn't notice Antonio's silent retreat to the boat. As the first tendrils of suspicion began to creep into Edward's mind, he saw Antonio's dark silhouette pushing the boat away, a cruel smile playing on his lips. Panic clawed at Edward's heart. He was stranded, the unforgiving ocean his only companion. The tide rushed in, a relentless wall of water threatening to claim him. He screamed, his voice swallowed by the wind's mocking roar. His pleas for help were lost in the symphony of the storm that was slowly brewing on the horizon. Exhaustion gnawed at Edward's limbs, despair a heavy weight in his chest. Just as he was about to succumb, he spotted a piece of driftwood bobbing in the distance. With a desperate surge of adrenaline, he fought his way towards it, the icy water threatening to steal his breath. He reached it and clung on for dear life, a tiny speck at the mercy of the unforgiving sea. Time lost all meaning as he drifted, a castaway on a sea of despair. Just when he felt hope fading into a distant memory, a faint call pierced through the wind's howl. It was a woman's voice, filled with a desperation that mirrored his own. Mustering his remaining strength, Edward strained to reply. The voice came again, closer this time. A tiny boat emerged through the growing haze, a lone figure at the helm. It was Nell, driven by an inexplicable pull, a gut-wrenching certainty that Edward was in danger. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat urging her on. Tears streamed down her face, each one a salty prayer for Edward's safety. With unwavering determination etched on her young face, she fought the waves, guiding the boat towards the faint cries lost in the wind. The storm, a jealous god witnessing their defiance, unleashed its fury. Monstrous waves rose like walls of churning water, threatening to capsize the small boat. Nell, drenched to the bone, gripped the tiller with white-knuckled ferocity. Her braid, usually neatly coiled, whipped around her face like a living thing. Every fibre of her being screamed at her to turn back, to seek shelter, but the image of Edward, alone and adrift, fueled her courage. Finally, she spotted him. A tiny speck, clinging desperately to the driftwood, tossed like a rag doll on the angry sea. Relief flooded her, a bittersweet surge that threatened to drown her. But relief was quickly replaced by a surge of terror. The tide had risen considerably, submerging the rock where Edward had been stranded. Now, between him and the safety of the boat, stretched a churning expanse of water, a battleground where waves clashed with a deafening roar. Edward saw the boat, a beacon of hope in the midst of despair. He called out, his voice hoarse, barely audible over the storm's din. Tears welled up in his eyes, a mixture of relief and fear. He knew reaching the boat was a near impossible feat, but the will to live surged within him. He kicked his legs, trying to propel himself towards Nell, but the current was strong, pulling him away. Nell knew she couldn't get close enough for him to jump. She needed a plan, and fast. Her eyes darted around the boat, searching for anything that could help. Then she spotted an old fishing net, a relic from Brown's scavenging days, lying coiled at the bow. An idea, desperate yet daring, sparked in her mind. With a strength born of desperation, she wrestled the net loose, securing one end to the boat. Then, with a deep breath and a silent prayer, she threw the other end into the churning water, aiming for Edward. The net unfurled like a lifeline, battling the current's pull. It stretched taut, the rope singing in the wind. Edward saw the net, a shimmering hope against the storm's fury. He knew this was his only chance. With a surge of adrenaline, he kicked his legs, paddling desperately towards the net. The waves buffeted him, trying to drag him under, but he fought on, fueled by the image of Nell's determined face. He reached the net, his fingers grasping the thick rope. Relief washed over him, but it was short-lived. The current, a relentless enemy, threatened to pull him under. With all his remaining strength, he began hauling himself towards the boat, hand over hand. Nell watched, her heart hammering against her ribs, each agonizing pull of the rope mirrored in her own strained muscles. She winched him in, inch by agonizing inch, the storm threatening to snatch him away at any moment. Finally, with a cry that mingled relief and exhaustion, she pulled him over the gunwale and into the bottom of the boat. Edward collapsed, his body racked with chills and exhaustion. Nell, barely holding back tears of joy, wrapped a spare coat around him. As she steered the boat back towards the shore, the storm seemed to relent, the wind's howl softening to a mournful sigh. The sky, bruised and battered, began to show streaks of pink and gold, a promise of a new dawn. Reaching the shore, Nell was met by John Brown, his face etched with worry. Relief flooded his features as he saw Edward, alive but barely conscious. Together, they carried him inside the cabin, the warmth of the fire a welcome embrace. Later, as Edward recovered from his ordeal, the news arrived. Antonio's body had been washed ashore near Dead Man's Ledge, the cruel sea claiming its due. The Browns buried him in a silent ceremony, a grim reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of their seemingly peaceful life. For Nell and Edward, the ordeal forged an unbreakable bond. They had faced death together and emerged stronger, their love a testament to the human spirit's ability to overcome even the most treacherous storms. As they stood hand in hand on the windswept shore, the sound of the waves no longer held a note of fear, but a melody of resilience, a constant reminder of the day they defied fate on Dead Man's Ledge.